AI and ChatGPT and all this type of technology is so incredibly fascinating to me. Okay. And also, in the beginning, was incredibly overwhelming. So now I've managed to find and figure out a way to use technology, to use AI, to use ChatGPT within my production business and within my own podcasting journey as well. And it has been a complete game changer. I am personally a fan of adopting new technologies because I think there's a lot of value in, really tapping into this type of industry and using it in a way that feels aligned for you and in a way that helps you bring your vision and your mission to life every single day. I think there's space for everything, and I think it's really important to be on top of new technologies so that we don't get left behind. In today's conversation, my friend Marc joins me for the third part of our 4-part series. And in this conversation, we're talking about ChatGPT part 2, and we're going into how to use it to help you create content, to help you brainstorm different blogs and newsletters and social media content. And I just know you're going to gain so much from this conversation today. So before we get into this conversation and meet Marc, I do want to just ask you and remind you, if you would love to make my day, please leave a rating or a review of the podcast where you're listening, whether that's on Spotify or on Apple. And please be sure to share this conversation with someone else in your podcasting network that needs to hear it. I know that they're going to gain something super, super valuable here. So with that in mind, thank you in advance. I'm so grateful for you. And I want to meet Marc really quick. I want to introduce you to him. So Marc Ronick is a podcasting veteran with over 17 years of experience, and he has a passion for empowering podcasters to turn their visions into reality. From launching his first fantasy football podcast in 2005 to founding the innovative Next Gen Podcaster membership platform, Marc's journey has been marked by an array of successful ventures. His popular comedy podcast, The Marc and Lowell Show, alongside his childhood friend, has accumulated over 1 million downloads. As a co-founder of the Realm Network and Ironic Media, Marc continues to help independent podcasters build their brand and reach wider audiences. With Next Gen Podcaster, Marc brings podcasters access to cutting-edge AI tools, expert advice, and a vibrant network of like-minded creators. He also hosts a podcast called Podcast PhD and leads the podcasting morning chat on Clubhouse, engaging with a community of hundreds of content creators every single day. So, let's get into our conversation and learn how we can leverage and use ChatGPT in the content creation side of our podcasting journey. Marc, welcome back to episode 3 of our series together on, we're talking about AI today. So welcome.
Yeah, we're more than halfway through already. I can't believe it.
I actually can't believe it. It blows my mind every single time how quickly these conversations go.
Yeah.
And also how jam-packed they are with so much information.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually could sit and I could talk to you for like hours, which I'm really excited because we actually are both going down a podcast movement together, which, well, I guess for you, it would be up. For me, it would be down, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Technically.
Yes. Well, me, it would be kind of west.
Sideways.
It wouldn't even be up. Yeah, it would be sideways. So
I'll meet you in the middle.
Okay.
I love it. Amazing. But yes, so we get to go to podcast movement together and we get to chat that whole time when we're going to be there. And I'm really excited because I feel like, there's always something that you and I can go back and forth on pretty much all day. I think you're one of the easiest people to talk to ever.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. So today we're talking about integrating AI part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And in this part of the podcast, I want to talk about content creation and marketing when it comes to your podcast, and also integrating ChatGPT and AI. If I know you focus more on ChatGPT, so we can definitely keep it to just that as a tool because there's so much to unpack there. But if there's another tool that comes to mind that you think people should sort of check out, actually, I probably should have asked you in the last episode. I want to know really quick before we get into the content side, do you think, and would you recommend ChatGPT over something like Jasper, for example?
I personally would. I was actually biting my tongue when I was talking about on the last episode, the fact that there was a lot of AI stuff out there that I wasn't impressed with.
Yeah.
I know Jasper is a big one. I know a lot of people like it, and I just never really liked the results it spit out. And maybe that was at the time because I wasn't as proficient using this kind of technology, but I just found right out of the gate that ChatGPT would do a much better job of spitting out the content in the way in which I want to, and it gives me the flexibility to change it in a lot of different ways and throw out a lot of different variables at it. Where Jasper, at least when I had used it at the time, it definitely gave you different types of tones you want to use in your writing and stuff. But with this, I mean, you can get as specific as writing in a similar style as your favorite author if you want to, right?
Wow.
And so you can get super specific with it, and that's why I like using it. There's just way more flexibility with that tool than a Jasper.
I didn't even think about using it to write a manuscript.
And I'm pretty sure that Jasper actually runs off of an earlier version of ChatGPT.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which I'm not at all surprised, because like you were saying in our last episode, that most of these other AI technologies and platforms run off of ChatGPT,
A lot
which
of them
is
do.
it's so crazy to me. And another thing that we didn't talk about in our last episode, but we can talk about it right now really quick, is this idea of, especially when it comes to like the ethical piece, this idea of, this kind of technology has been around for a very long time. So it's not like it's just brand new all of a sudden. It's actually been something that's been around for years, that, as someone mentioned in our Clubhouse room this morning, actually, that, it has just sort of now been made available to the public.
Yeah. I mean, there's somebody in our community on Clubhouse, Cynthia. I know you know Cynthia. Whenever I've talked to her about it offline, one of the things that she quickly says is, I'm not interested in talking about AI. I used it 20 years ago in the military when I was in the military. So yeah, it's been around forever. It's just that now it's mainstream. It's ever since OpenAI launched ChatGPT publicly, it's gone gangbusters, and now everybody is trying to either create their own version or find a way to incorporate GPT into their workflow, into their processes, into their systems.
Okay, very cool. I love that. And I think that is a perfect segue into the actual content creation side of using technology like this. So we talked a little bit about it in our last episode, but I want to dig into it in this one. How does AI help in generating content ideas for podcast episodes?
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit in the last episode about getting episode ideas, and we've talked about being able to harvest from the transcripts to create micro content, right? And you could turn your episodes into blogs, etc. But we could take this from, well, let's see, we even talked a little bit about already coming up with a podcast itself. You could use it for that. But so we could take this in so many different directions.
I know.
Starting with, well, I'm not going to go in any specific order. I'll just, one thing that I have encouraged people to use, and I've used myself, is I use it to prepare for interviews with guests. So one way to use it is to first see how much it knows who your guest is, right? If the name is big enough, it's going to probably know who that guest is. If it's not necessarily a known name or somebody who hasn't made a huge impact in their industry to where they're published all over the internet, you could give it the bio of that person, give it all the information that you know about the person, and then ask it to craft interview questions. Right. So, and again, not going to be perfect every time, but it will come up with a few, or it'll come up with enough to get you thinking about your own questions. Right. So I like to use it for that. When I have connected with bigger name people, I have even taught it to act like that person that I'm going to be interviewing.
Oh, wow.
And take on that persona of that person. And I have done a little mock interview just to prepare myself for the potential answers, to prepare myself for the kinds of questions I want to ask. If I got a kind of lousy answer, I could try again, so it's a great way to prepare for a guest. That would be another way that I would use it.
That is super cool. I never thought about using it for that. That is really, really cool. Because of course it would just kind of like scour the internet and like pull in all of the information that it has. But then also if you feed it social media links, website links, bio, whatever else, it's just going to pull it all and it's going to, give it to you in like this nice little package, which is really cool. One way that I've used it in the past, I used it for planning for our series because I was just curious of what kind of, information it would spit back at me. And I gave it, the 4 topics that we wanted to talk about. And I said, how did I prompt it? I think I said something like, what are like 5 key points for each topic that we should hit on when we're having this conversation. And it was able to generate, and like some of them were great. And like some of them I was like, okay, no, like I would never go there. But for the most part, it was pretty accurate. And it's nice to like not have that worry or like need to take up that brain space. But do you think that it could impact either negatively or positively the storytelling perspective?
How so? What do you mean?
If it's giving you different topics, do you think that it could lessen or remove some of the creativity that you would get if you were thinking about it by yourself or doing your own research and your own inspiration?
Well, yes. I think that I think the best way to have it do some storytelling is to give it some guidance about that story, give it the material to work with, and then have it kind of polish it for you, right? I've definitely been there when I'm writing content and I feel like I'm kind of scattered. I mentioned I had, in the last episode, I have ADHD. So sometimes I'll definitely get a lot of ideas at once and don't know really what to do with them. So if I just write them all down and not worry about the order that they're in or perfect grammar, and I just spit it all out and then tell it to take all of this information and craft it into something coherent, that's a great way to utilize it. Yeah, I mean, look, it can be pretty good at storytelling, and it's, again, it goes back to how specific are you with your prompt. If you can get really specific about the storytelling, the type of storytelling, the characters involved, if you can give it enough information, it can write a pretty darn good story. So yeah, I mean, I've seen people write anything from children's books to novels using ChatGPT. And the ones that are really spitting it out in a way that people are happy with are the ones that are the people that have poured in all of the information, all of that data to really flesh it all out.
I love that. Okay. So we talked a little bit about how you can use it for guesting and how you can prepare yourself as a host, which is really cool. I really like that perspective. What other pieces could you use it for along the content creation side of your podcast? So you have the guesting side, making sure all of that is good to go. I mean, I'm imagining you probably could even get it to write you like a guest email sequence if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, you can definitely use it for that. You can have it write specific emails to reach out to a guest, to get them to come in and, to be a part of your podcast. You can craft, actually, Nick right now, he has figured out a way to utilize it to help him with a funnel for our next gen podcaster community. So somebody gets a freebie that we offer, right? Yeah. And it created a whole sequence of funnel in an email sequence. So, from email 1 to email 5, hopefully by email 5, we've hooked them in to become a member of our community. So yeah, you can do it in all sorts of ways. And I was just thinking about, you got creative. You were just sharing with us the other day with time codes. Right?
Oh the bane of my existence. Trying to do math backwards, forget it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Especially when the number, like when the time changes. So what Marc is talking about is when I'm doing show notes for myself and for clients, I always have 2 different sections. I have in my show notes, I like to put time coded, like time stamped bullet points.
Highlights, yeah.
Yeah, highlights, exactly. And I do that I do it for like the audio version, and then I take it and I, have a version for the YouTube video as well, because I take out the intro, I take out the outro, and it changes the time codes, right? Typically it changes it by like 25 or 35 seconds. And so what I've been doing in the past, and I mean, I don't know how good this is going to be for my math skills, because it's definitely not going to help, but I've been counting sort of backwards from, 50 minus like 3 minutes and 50 seconds minus 35 or minus 45 or minus, and I'm just like, oh my, like it just, at the end of the day, when it's the last thing you want to do, it's the last thing you want to do. So I don't know what this light bulb moment came up in my mind the other day. I was like, oh my God. I was like, let me take these time codes and tell ChatGPT to remove 25 seconds from each one.
Yeah.
It took 2
Right.
seconds.
It's simple things like that. And, and what I would take that even a step further, Simona, besides sharing it with our community, I would make a piece of content about that and, a TikTok or a reel or what have you, and just, show people like, oh my God, I can't believe I hadn't thought about this before. Right. And showing people, because I bet you there's a lot of people out there that don't connect with, oh yeah, I could just do that and it would save me. Even if it saves you 5 minutes, it saves you 5 minutes, and it's a little less stressful to have something else spit it out for you that way.
Totally, especially when you're doing 20 show notes a week, 5 minutes across 20 shows.
Yeah.
It all adds up. It takes
Well,
a lot
do
of
the
time.
math for me real quick.
No, not a chance. ChatGPT, where are you at? Wait, no, 5 times. That's, you know what? That's about an hour and a half, right?
I don't know. I'm not even attempting.
You know what, Mark? I've gotten really well versed in my mathematical skills because I didn't realize and put 2 and 2 together to leverage this for that part of the process. No, that's awesome. I love it. So, okay, so we can use it for the guesting piece. We can use it for helping with the show notes side.
Writing blogs,
yes,
right? Turning episodes into blogs. And I know you know about this too. A lot of people have taken their podcast series and turned it into books, right? You could do the same thing with ChatGPT and your episode transcripts. Yeah, it's really endless. I mean, any content that you have been creating up until now, you can probably find a way to utilize GPT to help you with that process, to help speed up that process, and to help you with your creativity.
Amazing. Are there any other key parts of your production process where you use ChatGPT that you think would be helpful for our listener right now?
I think, it could be anything, even from, you mentioned in one of the last episodes how you love a good template. You could recognize what are some of the things that I am doing routinely. And once you've recognized it, you could go in and tell ChatGPT, make me a recording checklist, recording day checklist, right? And you could start just from there, and it will give you some answers, right? It will spit out something for you, and it'll probably be pretty darn accurate, but you may have some ways that you do things differently, so you just tweak it a little bit. But yeah, I have used it for templates and following checklists and processes like that. It can be as simple as that. You can have it write you a whole marketing plan if you really wanted to. So
yes.
Yeah, you can do it for anything.
You can totally use it for writing newsletters as well. Like you said, with the Next Gen Podcaster, writing out an email sequence, but you can also use it as like one-off emails, so you could take the transcript and you could feed it in and you could say, write me a newsletter based off of this transcript, which is really cool. And it's still your content. Another thing that I've done quite a bit with ChatGPT is every time I ask it to do something for me, if I'm asking it to write for me, I always ask it to lead the paragraph with a hook. So then that way
I've
you're
even
starting
taught it
out
how to write. I've taught it how to write good hooks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I haven't always loved the kind of hooks when I tell it to write a hook. I haven't always loved it. So I actually, using different examples of what I believed are good hooks, I fed it that, and then I have that saved conversation. So if I'm really struggling coming up with my own, I'll go over to it, tell it what I'm doing, and say, give me 5 different hooks, and it will spit it out that way.
I love that. That's genius. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were to give 3 benefits for leveraging AI in your content creation process, what would those be?
Time saver. It's going to save you a ton of time, which I think is probably one of the things that podcasters are looking for the most is how do I spend less time on this, right? And, look, you asked me earlier, if there's anything else besides ChatGPT, right? There's editing software out there that's AI run from Descript. And now I think there's something that just came out recently called Auto GPT, and it's not ChatGPT, but it is actually video editing software that it knows. You just give it the files and it knows whose camera to switch to when they're speaking and cutting out dead space and doing all the things, right? So it can be a big time saver, which ultimately I think it then leads to the next thing, which is it can save you a lot of money. And that's an area I know a lot of podcasters are interested in. How do I monetize? Well, saving money is probably a great place to start, is finding ways to do this at a less expensive way. The third way really is for your creativity. I mean, sometimes, like, for example, I'll be writing show notes or a blog or an article, and I sometimes struggle with how I'm going to end it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like it's not a strong enough ending and it's not really driving the point home. And I'll have rendition and I just never like it. I'll literally copy and paste what I have, and I'll basically say, fill in the blank, or finish this blog for me and make the ending concise, make it in the same style, blah, 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 blah. And it will spit out something for me, and I'll tell it, try it again, and I'll get some different versions out of it. That's a great thing for me. That's been very helpful for me. And then there's some times where it's fill in the blank. Like I'll give it a paragraph of something I've written and say, finish this paragraph, and hand that to it, and it will give me something back. So it's great when you are feeling stuck creatively.
I would also add to that too. If you are starting up a newer podcast, let's say, or starting a second podcast, or wherever you are in your podcast journey, coming up with a name is often a very, very hard point for a lot of podcasters, because it can feel like everything is taken. So coming up with a name is super, super key. And also creating, we had touched on this a little bit, but like reels, TikToks, video content, scripts for those. It will tell you like the composition of the video if you ask it to. What should I do in what frame? All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you can really have it spit out that script, and it'll maybe give you, your lines, but then, like you said, you could say, suggest shot changes, suggest footage, B-roll footage I can use in this scene, etc. So I do that all the time. And I'm not sure, did I mention to you, I've even taught it like how to write some of in my style. I don't know if you've seen, I used to do a Reels and TikTok series called This One Thing Is Killing Your Podcast.
Yes.
And I fed it all of the transcripts of those and all of the scripts that I wrote for those, and taught it that style. And now I can go to it, basically suggest the pain point that a podcaster is struggling with, and say, write it in that killing your podcast style. And it will spit it out that way for me, and maybe minor tweaks, but ultimately it just saved me at least an hour of writing myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on that note, then let's plug Next Gen Podcaster one more time. And maybe you can tell our listener right now a little bit about like how it works when they get in there, like what can they expect when they get in there. And I'll link it in the show notes. So the link is there in the notes below the episode for you to be able to get into.
So you can sign up, and immediately you can get a 1 month free trial. So you can go in, feel it out, play with everything that we have to offer there. We've created, like I said, a community there, and it's basically almost like its own social media platform as well. There's, people can start posts, and there's threads there. You can DM each other, all the things you can kind of do on social media, you can do there, and really create those connections with the other people that are involved in the community. We have tons of articles that we've been posting around the world of AI as much as we can, how it can impact, or how does it pertain to podcasting. So we have that section as well. We do at least 2 masterminds or master classes a month, where Nick and I will be leading that conversation, sharing the different tools and the different tricks we've learned with those tools with the community, and also an opportunity for them to share it with us. And we are very, very close to launching our own AI bot, if you will, which is basically like a podcast coach as AI. So we're teaching it what our beliefs are in podcasting and our strategies and tricks. And then our members can go and ask it questions. I'm having trouble with my show notes. Write me show notes based on XYZ. And it considers all of the direction that Nick and I gave it, and it will give them an answer based on our advice and our opinion. So
cool.
A great way to not have to necessarily use ChatGPT and as robust as it is, and get very specific Mark and Nick. And by the way, we named it Mick, a combination of Mark and Nick. The podcast coach, you get our information and our guidance at your fingertips whenever you want it.
That's amazing. So cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Mark, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I'm really
Thank
excited.
you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to dive into our next conversation.
Me too.
Oh, it's going to be
the
about
way
social
we
audio.
met.
It's the way we met. Of course, we would come back full circle at the end. Let's be honest. I'll see you on the next one. I know it's not just me that thinks this conversation was so powerful and so impactful. I learn so much from these conversations, and I hope that you are too. If you have, please leave a review of the podcast wherever you're listening to the show. And be sure to check out the show notes for all of the resources that we talked about throughout this conversation. I want to highlight 2 very important resources for you really quick. The first one is Mark's ChatGPT prompt guide. And then the second is the link to his Next Gen Podcaster community membership. So you need to go and check out those 2 links. They are in the show notes below. And if you want to connect with Mark, you can do so on Instagram, you can do so on Clubhouse, and you also can on his website. All of the links are in the notes below. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Share it with someone you know needs to hear it. And let's get into our next conversation, shall we?